Hello, 5th grade. Welcome to digital video art here. Most of you guys will need to finish drawing your castles today. If you're done drawing your castle, you have all the detail that you want on there, then you're going to be ready to start painting. Now, by all the detail, think about things like bricks on your castle, areas of stone, if you have wood, things like that. If you want to put other things in your castle, that's fine. I added this dragon that goes kind of all around. It even obscures a lot of my castle, but I did 2 other castles for you guys. So this time I kind of wanted to focus on the dragon too. Anyway, when you're ready to start painting, got to get your supplies together. A lot of our paints have been used quite a bit, so if you have one that is kind of low on a color, you can share with the other person at your table and have 2, and surely between the 2 of you, you'll get all the colors. See, this green's about gone, but I have a green here. Then you need to make sure you have the right kind of brushes. Brushes that look like this, that have really stiff bristles, these are not watercolor brushes. They're going to be really hard on your painting when you start working on this. You use water and it gets a little bit wet, it's going to tear up your paper, it's going to pill it up. So you want to make sure that any brushes like this, we save them for another project. Watercolor brushes, I've got them in here in my water. They have bristles that are really soft and a little bit longer bristles. A lot of times the brushes are round, so all 3 of these would be an example of watercolor brushes, and they're really soft, so they're not going to tear up your paper. Okay, then when you're ready to start, one thing that a lot of my 5th graders coming up are not aware of is that you have this area on your lid to mix your colors. So you can get all kinds of different colors other than just what's in the paint tray. A lot of times what comes straight out of the paint tray looks kind of fake, or it's too bright and you don't really like it. So like for my dragon, I toned this red down just a little bit with a little bit of brown, so it's not quite so bright. I wanted it to be a dark red dragon. Another thing you can do to keep your painting real smooth is use quite a bit of water. You want your paint to be see-through. If you're painting and your paint is so dark you can't see your pencil lines, you are not using enough water. You're going to need to add quite a bit of water to that. The brush strokes that you paint will show a little bit, so you want to think about where you're putting them. I'm painting the long way along my dragon like this, so that any brush strokes that I show will kind of make streaks that are going the right direction. You want to be as neat as possible with this paint, but don't freak out if you get a little bit outside of the lines, because you're going to go back with a Sharpie marker when you're done and you're going to trace over all these lines. So like here where my scales and my eye on my dragon have gotten kind of covered up, I'm not worried about that because I'm going to go back with my Sharpie and all those things are going to show up real clearly later. But I do want to try and stay in the lines the best that I can. So if the brush you're using is a little too big and you're having trouble staying in the lines like I am here, then choose a smaller brush for that area. Okay, another thing that may be a concern to you when you're painting is on the castle, a lot of you will probably want to have gray stone. That's real common for your stone to be gray. And we don't have gray in our box. So what we're going to do for our gray is to have light black. Well, black is a color that it is very, very easy to get too dark. So I'm going to start by painting some plain water in that area first. Hang on just a second, 5th graders. Hey, 7th graders, while I'm videoing, I need you to be quiet back there. We're not quite finished. Thank you. My 7th graders are helping me out with this video. So I painted some plain water on there first. Then, you girls got this paint palette in the picture?
Yeah.
I'm going to get my paint thinned out a little bit on my paint tray. And those 2 things are going to dilute this paint so that when I put it on here, it's going to be a nice thinned out gray instead of black. Now let's say I get that on there and it's still too dark and I don't like it. Let me get a streak on there. Too dark. Whoa, way too dark. I have a couple of options. One thing I can do is to spread it out and add more water to it. But if I just flat have way too much paint there, my other thing I can do is take a paper towel and lift some of that paint up. If I take my paper towel and drag, it's going to streak all that paint and it's going to make a big mess. But if I'm real careful and I put my paper towel on and just pat it, I can lift up quite a bit of that paint. Plus, sometimes my paper towel makes a really neat texture that I really like. So then I kind of have some streaky lines in there that I don't care for. But as long as my paper hasn't dried yet, I can come back with some plain water and I can smooth that out and blend it in. And you can really get rid of a lot of mistakes that way with your paint. By adding plain water, dabbing up the extra paint, add some plain water, dab it up until it's as thin as you want it to be. So nobody should have any excuse for their paint being too dark, even black. You can always lighten it up. But just remember to dab instead of scrubbing with your brush. And it's probably a good idea if the paint is a little uneven, a little cloudy like this, because then it has more of a texture of stone. Another thing that's really fun to do with watercolor paint, I did it for my other classes last week, just a little bit here in the sky, is blending as you go. You can do some really neat stuff with that. So we're not in kindergarten anymore. We realize that sky is not a blue streak at the top of the page. It comes all the way down to the land. So all this area back here behind the castle and the dragon is going to be sky. So I can paint it with clear water first. I can streak in some colors that would be in my sky. So I have a nice light blue sky. Maybe I want to put a little bit of purple in it, blend it in. As long as my paper is wet, it's going to blend and do some really neat things. You know, we think about these watercolor paints being kind of little kid paints, just because that's what they give you when you're a little kid. But you can do some pretty grown-up artist things with these paints in the paint box. It's just how you use them. So I'm going to bring the sky all the way down here to my rocks, letting it be kind of swirly, kind of uneven. So I have different colors in my sky. Like maybe it's getting close to sundown. You could do reds and oranges and purples for a beautiful sunset or a beautiful sunrise. Not every sky has to be blue. You could make it almost a black sky, like it's getting to be nighttime. Okay, but just to recap, the main thing, make sure you have the right kind of brush. Make sure you have the right size of brush for the area you're painting in. And make sure that you get your paint thin enough that you can still see through it and see all your pencil lines. And I think you guys will really like it when you're done. Okay, thank you, video person.